Hey, this is John. Welcome back to Modern Old School Developer. In this episode, I want to work on adding a dependent query with Redux Toolkit query. So when I flip back and forth, we are no longer refreshing our list of actors or categories or movies. But if you look closely at the form, it does seem like something's being refreshed. Why is this form data changing? Is it reloading the movie every time we flip back and forth? Yes, it is. So why is that happening? Well, every time we change the movie ID, we go and fetch that from the backend and then update the form. But wait a minute. Flipping back and forth shouldn't change the movie ID. Well, it kind of does. It depends on how you look at it. No, the movie ID is still the same. That hasn't changed. But when we flip back and forth, we have unmounted those components. When we go back and remount those components, we have an initial value, the first value that it's seen for movie ID. So although that's not a change, it is for the purposes of useEffect. So in that respect, it is changing. And that's one of the problems you run into when trying to manage asynchronous state synchronously. So let's see what we can do to solve that problem. So back in our Movie Manager API, let's make a new endpoint. We've got one that fetches all of our movies. We need one that fetches just a single movie. Let's just call it movie. It's going to be a builder.query. It's going to return a movie type, just one. And we need a parameter that's going to be a string argument, which will be our movie ID. It takes an object, a query, which takes a function, and this time we've got the ID. That's what our parameter is going to be over here. And now we're going to go to the endpoint /movies/ID. So better make that a template string. All right, and we will say provides tags. And this one's going to be movie singular. All right. Now let's go ahead and add that up here. All right. That should be good. We can now fetch an individual movie, or we will be able to once we export that use hook. There we go. Now we can fetch an individual movie. So let's see if we can do that. Let's go over to our movie list. This is how we're doing it right now. We do the useEffect hook, and every time movie ID changes, we fetch the movie from the backend. That's not what we want to do anymore. Instead, we want to use our new hook. We've got our movie query, we've got our movie ID. Let's fetch the movie based on our movie ID. So let's say const something equals use movie query, and we need the parameter, and the parameter is going to be our movie ID. But what if we don't have a movie ID? What if that is undefined or null or the empty string, which will not be a valid ID? We don't want to fetch it in that case. So why don't we say if we have a movie ID, so in other words, it's not the empty string, then we'll use movie ID. And if we don't, we'll give it a skip token. The skip token is a special Redux Toolkit query thing that says, I don't actually want to run this query right now. So whenever we don't actually have a movie ID, we won't run this query. All right, and we're going to get data just when we get back from the other thing. So we'll get data, we'll call it the movie, and I don't know if we need anything else right now, so let's leave it like it is for the moment. All right, so what do we do now in our useEffect hook? Well, rather than changing on movie ID, let's change based on movie. So we're not going to respond to changes in movie ID anymore, so we don't need movie ID. And we're not going to fetch things anymore because we're doing that somewhere else. So we can get rid of that as well. And all we have to do now is set our values based on whether things are okay or not. So all we have to do is say, do we have a movie? Because if we have a movie, then we're okay. We've got the data that we need. Because if we have an error or it's still loading, then movie is going to be undefined. Let's get rid of this and probably this. All right, there we go. So all we have to do now is change all these datas to be movie. And does that work? Yeah, I think that's all good. So this should be able to update our form state whenever we select a new movie. So this should prevent things from flipping back and forth or refreshing things when we flip back and forth. Let's see if it actually works. Let's go check. Okay, no issues found. There's a warning about movie type, but that's not important right now. Let's just go see if it works. So let's hit refresh. All right, so we have our movie selected. We can see that by going to our select box, movie ID is 1, and we have our form data in here. If we go back and forth, hey, I think it worked. I don't think it fetched it again. Let's go check that in our console. If we go into Python, you see it fetched it right over here. Here's our log where it fetched our movie. Does it fetch it again if we go back and forth? No, it doesn't. It's only fetching it the one time. Perfect. That's just what I wanted. All right, so what else do we need to do then? Well, the first thing I see is this dispatch hook. This is setting our actor selected, but we don't need that anymore. We have that on our movie object. So all we need to do is share that state with our actor form, and we'll have that there as well. So let's take out the last piece of state from our use reducer. So let's go down to initial state. We no longer need this at all. That can go away. The reducer, don't need that anymore. That can go away. The state context, that can go away. In the types for the form, that's still fine. In the state, we don't need this. We don't need any of the reducer actions. All we're left with now are the Redux types. And in our application, we're going to get rid of our state context provider. We no longer have that. We no longer import that, or our store, or the reducer, or what else are we missing? We don't need this dispatch hook anymore, or our use reducer. And I think everything else looks good then. Okay, a lot more dependencies to clean up, so let's go back to NPM and let's go fix that. So I see that in actor selector, it's trying to find state context and actions that don't exist anymore. Let's get rid of that and that. And right over here it says actor selected. We'll fix that in a minute. What else do we have? Can't find object state context. Yep, that's gone. The actions are gone. All right. The dispatch is gone, so that's good. What are we doing down here? We won't do this anymore. That can go away. And our actions, yeah, that should be good for that. All right, movie list. Get rid of our context, our movie type, our actions, our dispatch. What else do we have? It's got a dispatch action over here to set our selected actors. We can get rid of that now. We are no longer dependent on dispatch, so we can save that. And we have anything else? I think everything else is good. State context, that can go away. We no longer have state context. And we need to replace that though, so we can get rid of use context as well. And now we need to get our movie in the actor selector component as well. So let's get that. So back in our movie list, let's go borrow, I think we'll need this and just this, I think. So if we copy this over to actor selected, we can have this query here. So here is our movie. We need to import the movie query, and we need to import the skip token as well. All right, once we have that, we'll now have our movie. So if we go down to this, looking for dispatch. This is not something that we are doing anymore, so that can go away. So then state. So now we don't have state anymore. We simply have actors selected. So what do we want to do about that? We want to get movie question mark dot actors, and that will be our actors selected. So that should be good for that. And over here we've got state actor selected length. So we're going to need to say if we have our movie, then movie.actors.length is greater than 0. And then we'll return all this stuff in our select. Okay, I think that should be good. Let's go back to our terminal. What do we have here? Movielist.tsx. Use context is no longer in use. Okay, we'll get rid of that. What else do we have? Data form. Can get rid of use context over here as well. And hopefully that is everything. No more issues. Perfect. So does it work? Let's find out. Let's go ahead and refresh things over here. So I still seem to have our actors selected. We can change them and update them. If I flip back and forth, they're still there. Okay. It certainly looks pretty good to me. So what else do we need to do then? Well, let's try removing an actor. What happens if I take Elizabeth Shue off of Karate Kid? Well, it certainly says it did that, but I don't see it did that. Then we need to go back and forth. That didn't help. What if we refresh? Okay, there. She is off. So there is another problem. This select stuff is being handled with our normal synchronous state management. It's not being triggered by one of our async hooks. So because of that, we're not updating our state. So we need to do that, and then we'll be able to invalidate these things and get instant updates. Let's see how that works. So far, we've only seen queries used to fetch information, but Redux Toolkit has another method on Builder to make queries that update information. So let's go see one of those. I want to make a query that deletes an actor from a movie. We'll call it movie actor delete. And instead of using builder.query, we're going to use builder.mutation. The arguments are still the same. The return type, which is the movie type, and the arguments to our function. And that's going to be an object because we need multiple parameters here. So let's call it a movie actor association type, which we'll define in a minute. Now we need to call a function with an object. The object has a query parameter, just like we had in all of our other ones. We need to get our object parameters, so we'll destructure that object. We'll get an actor ID and a movie ID, and then we're going to return an object. So let's return the object, and we have certain parameters in this. We're no longer simply returning our URL endpoint. We need extra parameters. One of them is the URL though, so we'll call that URL. We'll use a template string, and it's going to be movie actor, and it's going to take some parameters, one of them being movie ID, which is going to be our movie ID, and then actor ID is going to be actor ID. All right, so that's our URL. The other parameter we need is the invalidates tag. Invalidates tags, I think like that. And this is going to be an array of all the tags that it invalidates. It's going to have movie and movies. So what this means is that when we have a successful mutation, we will refetch our movie queries and our movies query. So we will refetch the individual movie and our list of movies. All right, let's go make this movie actor association type. So let's say export interface movie actor association type. We're going to have an actor ID, which is a string, and we'll have a movie ID, which is also a string. All right, that should be good for our type. Let's go ahead and import that. All right, that should clear up all of our errors here. So let's export our use hook. So it's not going to be a query, it's going to be use movie actor delete mutation. All right, there is our hook. So let's go into actor selector and see how we can use that. You can see we've got this function up here on update actor. This is what's doing our endpoint integration right now. We simply run our fetch command. But we don't want to do that anymore. When we delete an actor, or later on when we update an actor, add one, we'll want to use our new hook that will invalidate our async state and refetch it for us automatically. All right, so let's see how that works. First, let's get our endpoint. So it's going to be const, and we're going to get an array this time. And the thing we want is the trigger. So we're going to say delete movie actor. No, sorry, that's not right. Movie actor delete trigger. And you can call it whatever you want. I'm calling it this. And we're going to say use movie actors delete mutation. And it takes no arguments. All right, so we've got our trigger. How can we use it? Well, I want to modify this function a little bit. I've got this ID, and that's good. I don't want to change adding right now. We're just going to change deleting. So let's say if selected, that means we are adding an actor. And we'll do all this stuff that we're doing right now. Okay? And if we are not adding the actor, then we are removing an actor. And we'll be down here. So what do we need to do? We need to call that trigger. And we're going to use async await. So let's put it in a try catch block. So let's say that we're going to get data. And the data is going to be a movie type. And that's going to be awaiting our trigger. So movie actor delete trigger. And we need to pass in our object parameters. That's going to be actor ID, which is going to be ID, and then our movie ID, which we already have. Okay, so now we should have data. So if we made it here, then we have successfully updated our actor. And we can simply do this thing right here as if we were checking on case 200. So let's go ahead and put that down here. And what else might we need? That should be good. We need actor name as well. I think we get that right here, and I think we can pull that out and put it up here, and that should be fine. All right, so that should be good then. And one thing I forgot to do is call the unwrap function over here, because we're going to need that to get our actual data back. Otherwise, we'll have a wrapped up object that we're not going to be able to get any information out of. They're actually returning an object that contains your data. So we're going to unwrap that to get the data that I want. So that's where we'll get our movie type and be able to use that. So if we're over here, then we have an error. And we'll need to switch on the error status. So let's do that. Error.status. And then we're just going to have these cases. Not the 200 case, but all the other ones. All right, I think we have to cast this error as well, because it's going to be an any type here. So let's say error as fetch base query error.status. And that should fix that error. Because I know at this point, if we've caught the error, it will be a fetch base query error. And we should have one of these kinds. All right, so I think that should work now. Let's go try it out and see what happens. So back in our Movie Manager application, let's try to remove Elizabeth's shoe. What happens? Unknown server error. Method not allowed. I forgot to add the method type. Let's go fix that real quick. So back in Movie Manager API, I've got the query, and I gave it a URL. I didn't give it the method. Let's go fix that. I remembered you needed invalidates tags, but I didn't remember where it went. So this should be method, which is delete, and invalidates tags actually goes here. All right, that looks like it should be better. So let's go try that. Let's refresh that. And now let's remove Elizabeth's shoe. Hey, looks like she's removed. I don't see her over here, and I don't see her over here. but the message disappeared awfully quickly. What happened there? All right, back in our movie list, you can see that in our use effect hook, we are setting the status whenever movie changes. And we just changed the movie by refreshing it. So I don't want to do this over here. So let's get rid of that. Instead, we'll put it in the onChange handler down here instead. And I think that should fix that problem. So let's go back over here. Let's put Elizabeth Shue back in there. And let's remove William Zabka. Hey, there we go. Successfully removed William Zabka from the Karate Kid 1984. That looks a lot better. So if I add him back, he's been added. And yeah, he should be in there somewhere. I can't scroll over that there, but he should be in there. So that looks good to me. All right, that's a good wrapping up point for today's episode. Hope you have enjoyed it. If you did, or you learned something, or you just want to, I don't know why, just do it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. They help out the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.